So I would like to start my presentation with what's happening in the luteal phase, in the natural cycle, and in the stimulated cycles, and to see together if there is a need for progesterone supplementation. So as you know, all of you very well, the progesterone is very low in the follicular phase, and just before the ovulation starts rising, and we have this plateau, and then drop 2-3 days before the menstruation. If we look what's happening in the stimulated cycle, you see that there is very low endogenous LH because of the down-regulation of the high estrogens and progesterone. However, instead of LH, we have ACG still circulating for 8 days to produce LH activity, and this is the magic bullet of IVF, this molecule ACG. The progesterone, you see, is very high even before the oocyte retrieval, that is the day of the ovulation in the natural cycle. So we have very high progesterone immediately after the injection of ACG, but we have a dramatic decrease around day 8 to day 10. So there is a huge difference, and it looks that the rationale is that we need progesterone somewhere around here in order to prevent endometrium from desexualization and early bleeding. And if we look to the question whether progesterone versus no luteal support is efficient or not, you see that most of the studies in a meta-analysis by Nozak in 2005 indicate that we need progesterone for luteal supplementation. So if we give either placebo or no luteal supplementation, we have to expect our results to be worse. Not that we don't have pregnancies. Pregnancies still occur, even with placebo or no progesterone. However, they are dramatically less. And that was the reason why the SRM Practice Committee in 2008 published a statement that in long-acting GnRH protocols, because only data exists on long protocols, progesterone supplementation yields significantly higher pregnancy rates, either intramuscularly or either vaginally. So we have 3 different situations when we have to look into whether we need and how to supplement with progesterone. Is the agonist protocol with ACG triggering? Is the antagonist protocol with ACG triggering? And lately, we have antagonist protocol with agonist triggering. So there are 3 different situations that we need progesterone. And the routes are very well known: the oral, the vaginal, and the intramuscular. And of course, there are different delivery systems, either already bred in the market or compounded by the pharmacist. For example, the suppositories or the intramuscular injection in the States is compounded by the pharmacist. We have the vaginal gel, we have capsules or even tablets for vaginal use. Regarding the first route of administration, the oral, I think that everybody agrees that we have a lot of metabolites. Actually, only 10% of the progesterone given orally ends as progesterone per se in the blood, and the rest, 90%, are metabolites. Many of them, they have a hypnotic and sedating effect. That's why there is a contraindication to drive after taking utrogestan orally or other formulation orally, and very nice studies performed by De Vrooy and Bourgain back to 90s in donors that they were supplemented with progesterone, and we took endometrium biopsies. They saw that after oral intake of progesterone, the endometrium was not correctly transformed into secretory in the luteal phase. So I'm coming in the second route, where is the intramuscular, and the third route, that is the vaginal use. A meta-analysis, the most recent meta-analysis in 2009 by Zarutsky and Phillips demonstrated that there is no difference between the clinical pregnancy rate, either intramuscular, either vaginal. And the same is true regarding pregnancy loss, because there is the belief, especially in the States, that with intramuscular progesterone administration, because you have higher blood and you keep a better plateau in the blood of progesterone levels, you have less bleeding and less early pregnancy loss. This is not true as well. But if we look into what the patient prefer, you see that the intramuscular use, and especially in the past with all the older from us can recall abscesses because of the intramuscular administration, of course, the patient prefer the vaginal route. But looking into the pathophysiology, many times with the doctors we do some mistakes when we design studies or we design a new medication. So we think that if we have high blood levels of progesterone, then the medication that we give to the patient works. This is not always the truth, because the target organ is the endometrium and maybe even the uterus, because around the embryo transfer, you know very well that if you touch the uterus, you produce contractility of the uterus, and then the uterus might expel the embryos. All studies before 95, when they were transferring 3 or 4 embryos in the uterus, and there was the vaginal cuff after 2 hours after the embryo transfer, they found up to 18% of the transfer embryos being already in the vagina. And the reason is the contractility. So you see that within 4 hours after the vaginal application, in that case, in this study was the gel, you see a nice diffusion of progesterone inside the endometrial cavity, as well as the uterine myometrium. And this is the reason why we have very low progesterone levels in the blood comparing to intramuscular progesterone. But on the other way around, when we look to the target tissue, is the vaginal use that gives the better levels on the endometrial tissue. And thinking that the one compound for vaginal use might have different efficacy from the other, suppositories versus tablets, tablets versus gel, gel versus suppositories, and via versa, we perform a meta-analysis with Dr. Polizos, and we found that there is no difference regardless the medication you use for vaginal administration. And the same is for the agonist cycles or for the clinical pregnancy. So that means that all the medications that we use for vaginal use have equal efficacy. However, if you ask a patient that she had experience with gel and then she used suppositories or the different, so Simonitz, they performed that study, the same patient that she had a consecutive IVF trial and switched to gel or from gel to Trogestan, they found that when they used the gel, they were more satisfied because it's more convenient and it's more easy to use because you take it once a day. So the third protocol that we need progesterone supplementation is after agonist triggering. You know very well that lately with the use of antagonists, the agonist triggering instead of ACG revived, and nowadays, especially in donors, we don't even use anymore ACG. It might even be considered unethical to use ACG in the oocyte donation systems. However, when we use agonist triggering, the first studies had very, very poor pregnancy outcome because there were a significant luteal phase defect. The ladies had bleeding within 5, 6, 7 days. Even if they were pregnant, they did abort. So gradually there was not so much using of agonist triggering in the normal IVF. So we try to find new ways to make the luteal phase better. So this is a protocol that we have published 2 years ago, where in the luteal phase, after agonist triggering, except progesterone vaginally, we administer recombinant LH in the luteal phase to play the role of ACG. So we need LH activity to rescue some corporal lutea, and either you can do it 300 units every alternate date, or you can use even less, up to 150 units every day. And you see the results are equal. These results are with single blastocyst transfer. That's why they're relatively low. Ending my presentation, still there is controversy when to start using the progesterone. I know that many of you start progesterone supplementation the night after the day after the ACG triggering. Others, they use it after the pickup, after 1 day after the pickup, or 2 days after the pickup. Some of the studies that I showed you before is with vaginal, the new studies after 2004 are with vaginal administration 2 days after the pickup. However, there is only one way to look in the data, and this is randomized studies. So we have a very nice study by Moftor when they had 3 groups, the ACG group, the oocyte pickup group, and the embryo transfer group. Actually, this was day 3. So if you look to the pregnancy rate, it was exactly the same. So even if you start 3 days after the pickup your progesterone supplementation, the pregnancy rate are optimum. And you can see it here that in the group of when you start progesterone on ACG, the progesterone, of course, the day of the pickup is already very high because you have already the follicles that they are producing progesterone plus the one that you give exogenously. But 3 days after, you see that it's becoming an equilibrium. 6 days after is the same, and thereafter is the same. So maybe this is the only study, but if we look back to the first graph I showed you in what's happening in the natural cycle and in the stimulated cycle, maybe we don't have to start so early progesterone supplementation. Concluding, Certainly, the use of progesterone improves ART outcome. This was your answer, I guess, from the questionnaire. Vaginal and intramuscular are equally effective to achieve pregnancy. Of course, vaginal route is more preferred by patients, and maybe starting too early is not the proper procedure. Thank you very much for your patience.